It was Father's Day 2014 that my wife Susie went into labour with our son Jet. Jet was found to have a congenital heart defect that would require open heart surgery. We were first alerted to a possible issue with our unborn son at a 12-week ultrasound. The head sonographer called us up after the scan stating that there was something they wanted to have a closer look at. He noticed an abnormality with the baby's heart. The condition is called transposition of the greater arteries, and it basically means that the main arteries going in and out of the heart are back to front. It meant that the blood that was being oxygenated by the lungs didn't ever make it to the rest of the baby's body, but just kept kind of going around in circles to the lungs. Of course, a baby in a womb is not using his lungs. This only becomes an issue after birth. It's incredible to think that anyone can see such detail in a baby that's only like 5 centimetres long. And that's what the specialists told us as well. They said they doubted the diagnosis and that they'd never heard of a TGA being diagnosed at such an early stage. When we returned to the confirmation scan, we were told the terrible news that the original TGA diagnosis had been correct. Now they were 100% certain that open heart surgery would be necessary. I think it's hard to comprehend how you could miss someone that you've never met. For me as a father, I feel like one of my duties is to protect my children, to protect my family. And it tormented me to know that there was nothing I could do to protect anyone from this. We were assured that this was a very common and successful operation, but it still tortured me that my son would have to go through such a physically traumatic process and there was nothing I could do. I remember that we pulled the car over the side of the road on the way home, and that was the first time we really grieved the news together. It was Father's Day 2014 that we were booked into hospital for an appointment prior to Susie being induced the following day. We booked the appointment early in the morning because I had optimistically planned to go first to the hospital to this appointment, and then I thought I could make it to church in time to help run things for Father's Day. I remember that Susie laughed at me as I dressed in my Sunday best to head off to the hospital. Of course, Susie started in labour straight away, and I had to come to terms very quickly with the fact that church could run without me. But at the end of the day, it wasn't really until the next day that things really got going. And Jet was born about 4 p.m. that next day. After a quick greeting, and we were able to kind of just touch him on the head before we followed him to Westmead Children's Hospital, where we stayed for the next little while and visited him over the next week while we waited for his surgery. The build-up towards the surgery was probably the most difficult part of the process. I just couldn't shake this image of this fragile body being exposed and open up, and it just really broke my heart to know I would be powerless. A friend had reminded Susie that God would heal Jet. He would either heal him through the surgery, or he would heal him by taking him to be with him in eternity forever. It was incredibly difficult to say goodbye to him at the door of the operating suite. We were confident in the surgeons, but of course we had that fear that this might be our last goodbye with him. Suffering had to happen before healing could come. That was the reality. And the only way we could enjoy an ongoing relationship with our son was to allow this operation to take place. The reality is that each and every human is born with a heart condition. Our heart desires that we live for ourselves, for our own success, our own fame, our own glory, our own happiness. And as a result, the world God has given us has been destroyed. The beautiful things like relationships that God has given us are damaged. And ultimately, most seriously, our relationship with God is severed. As this holy God, this righteous God cannot be in relationship with us who have rejected him. This is our heart condition. The Bible makes it clear that when we say we don't want God in our lives, well, when this life ends, we'll get our wish. We will miss out on an eternity of everything that is God, like love and relationship and beauty and peace and life. One of the words the Bible uses to describe this is an eternal death. The reality is suffering had to happen before healing can come. That suffering was in Jesus. God became a man and was rejected by mankind, and he accepted that rejection. He could have stopped it, but he didn't. He accepted it, and he suffered the consequences of that rejection. In doing so, Jesus brought healing. In the accepting of the rejection, Jesus offered true and eternal forgiveness. Jet's suffering also brought healing. When we first saw Jet after the surgery, we saw the impact the trauma had on his body. It was overwhelming. His limbs were unusually limp, and his body was swollen. He had these drains and lines attached to him. But as the week went on, we saw him start to recover, and he recovered incredibly quickly. I remember that moment when we first gripped my finger, and each day we saw as each line and each drain was removed, we saw him recover, and we eventually got to nurse him again. The surgeons have told us that Jet's operation is complete and final, and aside from some checkups along the way, there's no reason for him to not live a full and active life. Of course, we continue to pray that our children will have a long and full life. But even greater than that, we pray that their hearts will be with God. We pray that they might choose the forgiveness that is offered in Jesus. It's an incredible joy that both Susie and I share, to know that we have a restored relationship that will go on beyond the suffering of this life. We pray that our children might receive this forgiveness for themselves, the ultimate eternal healing.